What's up guys, JT Anime Nerd here bringing you all that nerdy goodness. Today we continue my version of the DC Extended Universe slash Snyderverse with a revision of the Aquaman movie. Originally, there wasn't supposed to be too much of a difference with this movie, other than a couple major changes by the third act, one in particular that really turns the movie over its head, and makes it feel like something that would be part of the Snyderverse. All I'm going to say is, don't always expect a happy ending. But after going through the whole movie and what James Wan wanted to truly show in this movie, I honestly think I've outdone myself with this revision. But if you want those juicy details, you're going to have to stick around all the way to the end. With all that explained, let's get into the revision. The story begins on a stormy night, where a narration by Aquaman himself tells the story of a lone lighthouse keeper named Thomas Curry, who found a lone woman at the edge of the docks of his home. Thomas brought the woman inside and placed her on the table. As the storm shorts out the power in the lighthouse, the woman spits up water and wakes up, instantly grabbing Tom by the neck and pointing her trident at him due to perceiving him as a threat. Tom attempts to explain until the power comes back on, turning on the TV and frightening the woman enough for her to throw her trident at the television. The woman then passes out, leading Tom to catch her. The next day, she woke up, greeted to the cute face of a puppy. The woman then notices that her wound is bandaged, but then notices a tank full of goldfish, leading her to grab one and eat it. Just then, Tom walks in, feeling a bit awkward at the sight of the woman eating his goldfish. Tom then jokingly asks her not to eat his dog. Tom then gives the woman some tea, to which Tom says will make her feel better. Tom then asks the woman her name, to which she answers Atlana, the Queen of Atlantis, leading Tom to introduce his name to her and states that he's the keeper of the lighthouse. As they continue to drink their tea, the two feel more comfortable with each other. As time passes, the two eventually form a friendship that would blossom into a romance. Aquaman's narration would reveal that she fled an arranged marriage and left her whole world behind. But in Tom's lighthouse, she found something unexpected. As more time passed, the two's love would eventually form into a child, naming him after a hurricane called Arthur. Atlana states that Arthur is living proof that their two worlds can coexist, and he may one day unite them together. As more time passed, Atlana is telling a toddler Arthur the story of Atlan's trident, stating that one day a new king will rise to use the trident to bring Atlantis together again. Suddenly, the dog begins barking, followed by an explosion that goes through the wall of the house. Just then, Atlantean soldiers approach Atlana, warranting her arrest by the order of her arranged husband, King Orvax. Atlana then fought back, defeating and killing the soldiers. With a heavy heart, Atlana decided she had to go back to Atlantis in order to keep Arthur and Tom safe, as he states that they will always find her. Atlana begins to cry, stating that where she's from, the sea carries their tears away. Tom then states that here, you feel them. Atlana then states that she will return to them when it's safe, and tells Arthur to stay strong and that she'll always be with him. Atlana asks Tom not to let Arthur forget her, to which he nods in agreement. Many years later, at an aquarium in Boston, Massachusetts, a young Arthur is talking to a group of fish who seem to understand him due to their attention being on him every second. As two bullies then pick on Arthur for talking to fish, a shark reacts and bumps the glass multiple times, cracking it. Arthur then reaches his hand out, quelling the shark's anger, leading the fish to hover behind him as his eyes glow. We then see the title card, Aquaman. Many more years later, a submarine is attacked by a group of pirates who have killed many of the crew on board. A man named Jesse Kane stands by as his son David Kane approaches, taking off his helmet after entering the control room. The captain of the submarine is then brought out by the pirates, with Jesse stating that the distress signal has been blocked. But the captain argues that the signal has been heard. In response, David kills the captain with an arm blade. A moment later, David informs Jesse that the rest of the crew locked themselves in the torpedo bay. David states that their reputation precedes them, but Jesse gives all the credit to David, followed by giving David a dagger that belonged to his grandfather. Jesse then tells the story of how David's grandfather was a Navyman during World War II, and his unit nicknamed him Manta for being incredibly stealthy underwater. However, His country forgot about him after the war, and so left to scavenge in the sea in response with his dagger, founding the pirate crew that they are a part of today. Jesse states that David's grandfather gave it to him when he was young, and now it belongs to David. Meanwhile, one of the pirates notices something on the camera, followed by something causing the submarine to shake. David thinks they hit something, but Jesse makes clear that something hit them. The pirate looking at the camera states that he sees something, and that it looks like a man. Just then, the man lifts the submarine to the surface, causing a commotion inside of it. In the aftermath, David states that what hit them was not a man. The man and then jumps to the top of the submarine, with the pirates inside ready for battle. Just then, as the two pirates look up at an escape hatch, they are defeated by none other than Arthur, who is now known as the Aquaman. In a lengthy hallway fight, Aquaman defeats the pirates. Arthur then frees the rest of the crew, getting them to escape to safety via life rafts. Suddenly, Aquaman gets hit with multiple bullets shot at him by David, leading them to continue the battle deeper into the torpedo bay. Aquaman questions David how he knows him, to which David replies that he scavenged the seas and therefore knew him and the Aquaman would meet at some point. With ease, Aquaman defeats David, but the fight is interrupted by Jesse, who shoots Aquaman with small explosives, but to no avail. Aquaman then pierces Jesse's shoulder with a pipe, leading David to cry out for his father, and so having Aquaman to put two and two together. After Aquaman takes out the pipe, Jesse attempts to fire at Aquaman again, but ends up getting pinned under a torpedo. Desperate, David asks Aquaman to help save his father, but Aquaman responds by saying they killed innocent people, so they should ask the sea for mercy. Jesse tells David to run so he can live to kill Aquaman, but David refuses, leading Jesse to pull out an explosive as an incentive for David to save himself, something David curses his father for. Heartbroken, David escapes, hearing the sound of the bomb end his father's life. David ascends the ladder with more determination to kill Aquaman. Meanwhile, Aquaman gets the crew members to safety. Back at the lighthouse, an older Tom is by the docks, seemingly waiting for Arthur. Tom then decides to head back inside, but is then greeted by Arthur, stating that he already knows where to find him. Arthur and Tom embrace in a hug, followed by Tom stating that he'll make some breakfast. Moments later in the lighthouse, an urn is seen on the top of a mantle over a new fireplace where the hole in the wall was made by the Atlantean soldiers, while Arthur chugs some beer with an empty plate of seemingly pancakes in front of him. Just then, a news report about the pirate attack on a government prototype stealth submarine is on television, stating that social media believes that Aquaman, so they call him, is responsible for the rescue. Arthur immediately dismisses any involvement, but Tom now realizes that everything his mentor Volko has been training him for is finally paying off, stating that his mother knew he was special. Arthur pleads with his father to stop, but Tom states to Arthur that whatever Atlantis' problems are, he's bigger than them. Aquaman then states that Atlantis is the kingdom that killed his mother. Tom tries to argue that it may not be true, but Arthur is adamant on believing it. Tom then tells Arthur that one day he'll have to stop blaming himself. Arthur then decides to storm off, stating he's going to the bar. Meanwhile, somewhere in the ocean outside of Atlantis, a group of Atlanteans led by Nereus, the king of the Zebel kingdom, rides seahorses toward an ancient Atlantean ruin. At the ruins, the group of Atlanteans meet up with a man on a shark, introducing himself as Orm, the current king of Atlantis, and half-brother of Arthur. Orm's vizier Volko, who is also Arthur's former mentor, tells Orm that the man approaching understands the significance of the meeting and will hear Orm out. Orm and Nereus greet each other, with Nereus slightly complaining about being in a place too close to the surface for his liking. Orm, however, argues, acknowledging the ruins they stand in as the Council of Kings, with Orm reminding Nereus of the hierarchy, such as Atlantis sitting at the top, Zebel being at their side, the Brine, the Fishermen, and then mentioned that the Deserter and the Trench tribes had not fallen during Atlan's time. Orm describes the once unified Atlantis as the greatest empire ever seen, but is perturbed by following ancient laws while the surface threatens Atlantis. Nereus states that the humans will destroy themselves, as violence has always plagued them, but Orm argues that they will end up destroying Atlantis before destroying themselves. Orm then states that the time for hiding is over, followed by Volko inviting Nereus and Zebel to be the first to enter into Orm's alliance. Nereus, however, points out that by law, Orm needs 4 of the 7 kingdoms' approval before he can be allowed to ascend to the surface and declare war. Nereus then states that the lost nation and the deserters have long perished, the trench are animals, the brine will never join them, and the fishermen are cowards. Nereus then states that what Orm truly wants is Zebel's army to convince the other kingdoms to pledge themselves to Orm, so that he can be ordained Ocean Master. Orm tries to play a coy, calling it only a title, but Nereus knows that once Orm's Ocean Master, he will possess the greatest military might on the planet. Orm tries to make his case that he's the natural choice to lead the army, but Nereus brings up the existence of Arthur, Orm's brother. Orm then argues that Arthur's loyalty is to the surface. Suddenly, the argument is interrupted by an explosion caused by the torpedoes of the very stealth submarine that the pirates tried to take, bringing the Council of Kings down. Volko orders his men to arms, with Orm saving an injured Nereus. Orm then attempts to bring the submarine down, with Orm using his trident to destroy its propeller, causing it to retreat. As Nereus approaches Orm, he states that the war has already begun, leading Nereus to agree to Orm's alliance and send the humans a message that they'll hear. Volko then shows an expression of concern. Orm then states that he will pursue the vessel that just attacked, and asks Nereus to ready the message, to which Nereus agrees. Back in Boston, Arthur exits a bar, surprisingly sober. Just then, he notices none other than Mara, the woman he met during Steppenwolf's attack, rising up from the water below and walking up to him. Before Mara could speak, Arthur immediately refuses her, knowing that she's going to ask for his help. Mira then points out how he defeated Steppenwolf and saved Atlantis, to which he argues that the situation had nothing to do with Atlantis. Before getting into his truck, Mira states that Orm is preparing to declare war against the surface, stating billions will die, whether they are Atlantean or human. Arthur's attention is then caught, with him asking how they would even stop him. Mara states that by his birthright, he is the rightful king of Atlantis, and so must take his place as such. Arthur laughs and sarcastically asks Mira if she really thinks Orm will give up the throne that easily. He then points out that he's the bastard son of a queen Atlantis executed, and for that, Atlantis could rot for all he cares. With that, Arthur states that he is no king, something Mira agrees with, but points out that Volko believes in him for some reason. Mira then states that Volko has learned the location of the lost trident of Atlan, to which Arthur states is a myth. However, Mira states that it's not, and claims that the people of Atlantis will listen to him and allow him to claim his birthright. Arthur then states that his birthright died with his mother, and that the only thing he regrets is ever thinking she left him without just cause and hating her for it. But Arthur does promise that if Orm attacks, he'll treat him the same way Atlantis treated Atlanta, with no mercy. And if he can't stop Orm, his super friends will. Meanwhile, in the middle of the North Sea, David is on top of the stealth submarine, beholding the dagger his father Jesse left for him. Suddenly, a humongous glow shines underneath the water below the submarine, which surprises David. Just then, a group of Atlantean soldiers jump out of the water and surround David, who's ready for a fight. From the front of the submarine, Orm jumps out of the water, his trident then pointed at David. Orm asks if David is the leader of this vessel, something David proudly admits. Orm then interrogates David, asking why he attacked the Council of Kings. David then explains how his family has been obsessed with the legend of Atlantis for years and claimed this vessel in order to prepare for a mission to find it. However, David then states that one of Orm's own killed his father, to which Orm questions him on who he's talking about. David then describes him as a man with long hair, a long beard, and glowing bronze-like eyes, calling him the Aquaman. Orm then realizes who he may be talking about, placing his trident down and stating that he is not one of us. David's expression then turns to one of confusion. Orm then explains that the man he's speaking of is a bastard born out of a love that's diluted the pure royal bloodline. David then states whoever he calls himself, he killed his father, catching Orm's attention. After pondering for a moment, Orm then states that maybe they were destined to meet after all, and then orders his men to lay down their arms. Orm then states that they may be able to help each other. But an Atlantean soldier steps up and states that he cannot allow this, whether Orm is king or not, and so points his blaster at David. Orm then calmly turns to the soldier, stating that he admires his loyalty to Atlantis. Orm then uses his trident to disarm the soldier and stab him in the torso through his armor, with Orm stating that he shall make his story a noble one. After the soldier falls down and dies, Orm and the rest of the soldiers take their leave, telling David that he'll need a few days to prepare and has to get David's new weapons prepped. David looks on in confusion, but hopes that he doesn't regret making this deal. Meanwhile, Arthur is driving back to the lighthouse, pondering Mira's words, but forces himself to shrug it off. Just then, Arthur looks to the coast and notices a giant tsunami headed straight for the island side. Arthur then looks on, being able to see the lighthouse from where he is, and begins to fear the worst. Arthur speeds up in his car as fast as he can, but the tsunami catches up with him and pushes him into the current. Arthur then looks around, witnessing multiple people being flung around by the current, leading him to grab and save as many as he can. After grabbing all the people he could, he tries to find a place where they can get some air. Suddenly, a huge bubble of air forms where Arthur is, giving the people he's carrying a chance to breathe. Mira then appears, revealing to be the one who created the air bubble. Arthur then sees a man in a truck, who he then pulls out, but realizes isn't breathing. Mira then decides to use her powers to extract the water in the man's lungs, saving the man. Knowing that everyone is safe, Arthur then heads for the lighthouse. When Arthur arrives at the lighthouse, he finds minimal damage, as well as his father are okay when he enters the lighthouse. Tom states that this doesn't seem like a natural disaster, with Arthur reluctantly confirming that it's his brother's work. Tom gives Arthur a look as if he's telling him to embrace his destiny, but Arthur tries to argue the issue. Tom then states to Arthur that a man can burn bridges, but a king builds bridges. And right now, the wall between Atlantis and the surface is coming down, so someone's going to have to build that bridge. Arthur then exits the lighthouse as Mira approaches him. Mira asks how Arthur's father is, to which he replies he's okay. Arthur then states that he never got Mira's name, to which she tells him her full name, Princess Ymera Zabella Kala, or just Mira for short. Arthur then thanks Mira for helping save the civilians. Arthur and Mira then look at the damage to the land from the tsunami, with Mira confirming that Orm did this, and that the worst is yet to come. Arthur and Mira look at as ships and human waste from the ocean have been dumped onto land as a message to humanity. The next day, news reports all over the world report on the garbage and debris put back on land, described as decades of pollution being thrown back on land. The reporter asks if this is a natural disaster, but a doctor named Stephen Shin tries to explain that this was the first contact with Atlantis, to which no one believes him. However, Stephen Shin brings up the existence of Aquaman, who he believes is an Atlantean. Meanwhile, Arthur and Mira appear at the coast, with Arthur realizing that this was where Volko taught him how to swim. We then get a flashback of a young Arthur and Volko, with Volko stating that Arthur has to forget all the teachings of the surface world, and that he must go deeper to uncover his Atlantean instincts. Arthur states that he knows how to swim, but Volko replies, not even close. Back in the present, Arthur makes it clear to Mira that after they defeat Orm, he's done, to which Mira states is for the best. Arthur and Mira then dive down into the water to begin their adventure. Another flashback shows young Arthur and Volko swimming, with Arthur discovering his Atlantean powers, such as talking underwater, bioluminescent vision, his body's protection from the cold and pressure, and swimming at a breakneck speed. After a few hours of fun swimming, Arthur meets up with Volko and asks him when he can meet his mother. Volko replies that he'll see her soon, and that he'll take him to Atlantis to meet her when he's ready. Back in the present, Mira leads Arthur to an underwater cargo crate, where she hid her underwater ship in order to make it to a rendezvous point. Arthur and Mira make their way to the rendezvous point, eventually entering at the gateway bridge of the Kingdom of Atlantis. Arthur complains on how people can't just go over the walls into the capital, but Mira states that they never make it past the hydro cannons. With Mira using her diplomatic clearance, Arthur and Mira enter Atlantis without any trouble. Arthur takes a moment to at least admire the beauty of the environment of Atlantis. Eventually, Arthur and Mira make it to a safe house within an old city, a place Mira states that the Highborns never venture to. Arthur and Mira arrive at a sunken ship, where Volko greets them, happy to see Arthur again. Volko then explains that Orm and Nereus, Mira's uncle, were attacked by surface dwellers. Arthur argues that humans think Atlantis is a myth, even pointing out that even if they didn't, they don't have the sufficient knowledge of Atlantis, its existence or location. Despite these facts, Volko knows that it was at least a human vessel due to him being a witness of its attack. Volko then explains that because of this attack, Zebel has joined Orm's alliance and given Orm the power to force two other kingdoms to join him and be given the ability to launch an attack on the surface. Volko states that they need to dethrone Orm, with Arthur arguing that he doesn't want to be king. Mira then interjects, stating that if Orm's named Ocean Master, he'll have power unlike anything Arthur's ever seen. Arthur then states that if that's what she thinks, then she hasn't met any of his new friends yet. Arthur also claims that he's from the surface world, and therefore no one will take him seriously. Volko then states that Arthur has to prove he's a worthy king by retrieving Atlan's trident. Volko then tells the story of Atlan's trident, stating that it was crafted from Poseidon's steel for King Atlan by the greatest weapon masters in history, with some even saying that the smith god Hephaestus gave it his blessing. Atlan was the first ruler of Atlantis, wielding the trident that was said to be imbued with the power to command the sea. Arthur then asks what happened to the trident, leading Volko to tell the story of the Great Fall. Volko states that the time of King Atlan was a time of great prosperity and technological advancement, but Atlan's ambition in experimentation led to Atlantis' fall from grace. An experiment involving the trident of Atlan ultimately leads Atlantis to sink into the ocean, dividing its people. However, Volko explains that evolution allowed the Atlanteans to evolve into the 7 separate species, forging the 7 kingdoms of Atlantis within the ocean and granting them the ability to breathe underwater, with some evolving and some regressing. Volko then states that King Atlan placed himself in self-imposed exile, never to be seen again, along with his trident. Back in the present, Volko presents an ancient cylinder of some kind that dates back to the First Dynasty, said to have been discovered by his archaeological team. Volko states that he believes it contains Atlan's final message and the location of the trident. Volko then states that the cylinder bears the markings of the Desert Kingdom, the kingdom of his ancestors, and so tells Arthur and Mera to take the cylinder there to retrieve the message. Arthur questions Volko on mentioning that he was a descendant from the Deserters and asks why he can't translate it. But Volko states that the only thing they inherited from their ancestors was their ancient armor, not their knowledge. Mera even explains that the only use the Highborn saw for the Deserters' descendants was to protect the Mother Box, but now they struggle to find new purpose after Steppenwolf. Just then, Atlantean soldiers from Border Defense break into the safe house, attempting to arrest Arthur for illegal entry. Volko prevents Mera from intervening, stating that she mustn't be seen. Arthur then takes on and defeats almost all of the soldiers until an elite red armored soldier appears with an Atlantean steel sword in his grasp. After a lengthy battle, Arthur defeats 2 elite soldiers, but is overpowered and defeated by the third one, with Mera and Volko having little choice but to leave and let Arthur fend for himself. Many moments later, Arthur wakes up in chains and is shocked by Atlantean prods, being presented to Orm as his prisoner. Arthur's trident just inches away from Arthur. Orm genuinely welcomes Arthur to Atlantis, with Volko and Mera sitting at his side. Orm then expresses his confliction toward his brother, not expecting the man he sees before him, with Arthur seemingly itching for a fight as he gets in Orm's face. Orm then questions why Arthur is even here, with Arthur stating that he's just trying to stop a madman from destroying the world. Orm then argues how Arthur plans to stop the atrocities that humanity has committed against the ocean, showing holograms of humanity polluting the oceans, poisoning sea life, and even showing the exploding oil rig that Clark Kent was on in Man of Steel. Orm then states that not only he has whispers of Arthur, there's a lining of himself with an Amazon, an ancient enemy of Atlantis, been heard, but now has come all this way to take sides against his own people. Arthur then asks Orm if he expects him to take the side of the people that murdered their mother, catching Orm a bit off guard and unable to argue. Orm then states that Arthur has seemingly chosen an aside in an attempt to claim the throne, to which Arthur states he does if it means he can stop this war. Orm then asks if Arthur is invoking the combat of kings, to which Arthur agrees to, much to Mira and Volko's manipulative protest. Moments later, Arthur gears up and prepares for battle when Volko enters and scolds Arthur for his rash decision. Volko then decides to test Arthur's fighting prowess, leading to a flashback showing a teenage Arthur training in combat with Volko. After much training, and even showing Arthur an incredible pinwheel technique with the trident, Arthur begins to get frustrated about not being able to meet his mother. Arthur then questions if she didn't even love him, leading Volko to tell him the truth about her leaving to protect him due to her arranged marriage with King Orvax. However, Volko reveals that after Orvax found out about Arthur, he became overwhelmed with jealousy and took it out on his own people, leading Atlanna to forge a rebellion against him. But after many years, Atlanna and the majority of her rebels were caught and executed by means of being fed to the trench. Arthur then realizes that she was executed for having him, leading him to resent Atlantis' people forevermore. Back in the present, Arthur stands ready to face his brother. In the Ring of Fire, Orm presents a bracelet to Mira, one that belonged to his mother, Atlanna. Mira then argues with Orm about going against what Atlanna taught them, leading Orm to state that what she taught them was treason. Arthur then enters the Ring of Fire, ready to begin as Orm orders Volko to escort Mira, his betrothed, to the royal box. Orm then talks about the legend of the Carathan, a sea monster that King Atlan imprisoned long ago and is biding its time in the abyss, awaiting to rise, comparing Atlantis to the Carathan. Arthur then expresses how there was a time he wanted to meet Orm, let him know that he wasn't alone in the world, but didn't realize the kind of person he would turn out to be. Orm then places the blame of their mother's death on Arthur and has hated him for it ever since, but states that he doesn't want to kill Arthur. Orm then gives Arthur a chance to go home, never come back to Atlantis, and await the coming war. But Arthur does not relent. The top gates open, allowing the two combatants to enter the true Ring of Fire. After Orm makes a speech, Arthur enters the ring. Meanwhile, in the royal box, Mira argues to her uncle Nereus about this needless bloodshed, with the battle between Orm and Arthur beginning by the end of it. As the battle rages on, Volko and Mira realize that this is more than just a battle, it's an execution, with both Arthur and Orm having a few close calls. As Atlantis cheers at the raging battle, Mira leaves the royal box, removing her formal wear while going down a hallway. After the lengthy battle, Orm splits Arthur's mother's trident in two, cementing his victory. As Orm attempts to strike the final blow, an air bubble is unleashed on Orm, sending him down to the ground, followed by the water smashing upon his body. Mira then arrives on a ship to escort Arthur away, taking their leave together, much to Orm's rage. As a chase throughout Atlantis ensues as the duo attempt to escape over the gateway bridge wall, leading Orm to give chase as well, feeling betrayed by Mira. After a tense encounter with the hydro cannons, the duo makes it over the wall, but escapes out of the ship due to it falling into lava. Arthur then uses his powers to have a whale allow refuge for them in its mouth, much to Mira's disgust. After Orm sees their ship in the lava, he is disappointed, but still suspicious. In the whale's mouth, Mira asks how Arthur did that, leading to the question if Atlans can't do that, to which Mira confirms. Arthur then just explains that all he knows is that he can speak to the creatures and they can speak back. Arthur then asks Mira where to go next, to which he states the Sahara Desert in the west. Moments later, Arthur and Mira take a plane to where they need to go, with Mira confiding in Arthur that she's never been so far from home. Arthur then states that at least she has a home, but Mira argues that she betrayed everything by saving him, stating that not even her uncle or her parents would ever take her back, even stating that Atlanna was all she had until the rebellion, and that the one thing Atlantis is not is forgiving. Arthur then states that at least she doesn't have to marry someone she doesn't love, with Mira stating that her obligation isn't to love, but is for her family, nation, and that sometimes you have to do what's right, even if your heart aches against it. Arthur then speaks bluntly, stating that what she's just said is nonsense, stating that he doesn't save innocent people because he feels obligated to. He does it because he wants to. Arthur then states that he does not does because he does what he does because of what he believes, not what others have told or taught him to believe, and that and states that in the end we all have the freedom of choice on how to carry our lives, and that anyone says otherwise is just selling something. Despite Mira wanting to argue Arthur's point, she has nothing to say, subconsciously knowing that Arthur is right, no matter how she wants to twist it. Meanwhile, in Atlantis, Orm's second-in-command Merc has tracked Mira to the Desert Kingdom due to her bracelet being a tracker. Orm then orders Merc to assemble a strike force, but Nereus argues that Mira is to be arrested and safely returned. Orm argues that she betrayed the throne, but Nereus makes it clear that their alliance will be broken if any harm befalls her. Volko then states that they are entering the fisherman territory, keeping Orm's attention on the alliance. Orm then agrees to have the two arrested and Mira brought back unharmed. Back in the desert, Arthur and Mira arrive at their destination, having to jump out of the plane in order to reach it. Meanwhile, in the Indian Ocean, Atlantean soldiers appear before David, who has been waiting for a while for his weapons. An aquatic hologram of Orm is then presented to David, presenting and explaining the new prototype weapons and armor for the next generation of Atlantean soldiers. Orm even offers his commandos to David as aid in killing the Aquaman. Orm then states that if he kills Aquaman and Mira, then he will be rewarded, to which David states that killing in Aquaman is his reward. David is then presented with a plasma cannon that converts water into energized plasma, making him very happy. Moments later, David works on creating something out of the technology he's been given, ultimately going to need more to work with, but shows progress in the end. Back in the desert, Mira explains how one of the tribes of Atlantis broke off and settled in the desert, but died out after the water dried up. Arthur gets frustrated at the fact that they're lost in a wasteland, with Mira stating that Arthur calls this wasteland home, to which Arthur makes clear that the whole earth doesn't look like the desert. Mira then argues the fact that humans pollute and damage the oceans in the world, with Arthur agreeing with her but making it clear that he doesn't like how Atlanteans think they're so different, which catches Mira's attention. Mira then begins to get angry at Arthur, asking how he could compare them with such selfish people as the surface dwellers. Arthur argues that like them, and even the Amazons, they're not perfect, but are just like the rest of them. Arthur then states that it doesn't matter what species you are, where you come from, or what kind of person you are. Ultimately, they are all the same. Flawed people with complex natures that can't seem to take a hint at the fact that the universe doesn't revolve around them, and that they're not special at all. Mira tries to argue the fact, but Arthur asks if they're not so different, then why does Atlantis believe the actions of the few reflect on the many? Arthur then states that the point he's making is that you can't judge a place before you see it, with Mira arguing that he's judged Atlantis for far less. However, Arthur makes it clear that he doesn't judge them for anything else other than his mother's death and the archaic laws that they follow. Arthur then tells Mira to look him in the eye and tell him that the people of Atlantis didn't agree with King Orvax feeding her to the trench. Mira hesitates for a moment before the two end up falling into a sinkhole that leads directly into the Desert Kingdom. The two then enter the Hall of Armory, where Mira states that the trident was forged. Then noticing a pedestal machine of some kind with an insert that appears to match the bottom of the cylinder Volko gave them. After inserting and wetting the cylinder, an aquatic hologram of King Atlan appears and explains that whoever seeks the trident must journey beyond the edge of the world to the hidden sea. Look inside the bottle for the charted path. Only in the hands of a true king can he truly see. Mira then destroys the cylinder to keep Orm from finding it. A hidden hatch then opens, startling Mira and leading her to grab Arthur's hand, giving them a moment of sorts. The hatch possesses an old bottle with a map to their next destination, Sicily, Italy. Seemingly days later, Arthur and Mira arrive in Sicily, enjoying the sights and beauty of the place, with Mira even entertaining a little girl with her powers. Arthur then gets info from a local that their next destination is a castle just above them. Meanwhile, in the Fisherman Kingdom, the Fisherman King Riku refuses to join Orm's army under the belief that the fishermen are meant to educate the surface dwellers, not fight them, when the time comes to reveal themselves to them. Orm then succeeds in manipulating Riku to attack Orm by wounding his pride, leading to Riku's death in self-defense. Orm then orders the Fisherman Princess to rally her armies, or the Fisherman Queen will meet the same fate, stating that they will move against the Brine Kingdom next. This leaves a bad taste in both Volko's and Nereus's mouth. Back in Sicily, Arthur and Mera end up at the top of the castle, where statues of historical figures stand, with Arthur realizing that the only one of them that was a king was the statue of Romulus, the first king of Rome. Arthur then places the bottle in the statue's hand and looks inside of it, realizing that inside the bottle is a map of the hidden sea. Arthur and Mera are excited for a moment, even sharing a slight romantic moment, but are then interrupted by the appearance of David in black armor, accompanied by Merc and elite Atlantean soldiers. During the battle, David introduces himself as Black Manta, with Arthur realizing that it's the pirate he faced before that's attacking him. Meanwhile, Mera is fighting off and being chased from the Atlantean commandos, who show to not be able to breathe air. Arthur asks Manta how he even found them, with David revealing that the tracker on Mera. As Black Manta uses his plasma beam, Arthur does everything he can to protect the civilians while Mera is still being chased by Merc all the way to a liquor store. As Arthur gets the civilians to safety, Black Manta gets the upper hand on Arthur. After Merc's helmet is compromised and hilariously finds water to breathe in from a toilet, the rest of the commandos fall all in to confront Mera, who uses her powers on the liquor around her and kills them with liquid spikes. As Black Manta takes to the sky, Arthur knocks him down with a piece of the gravel and has him seemingly fall into the ocean. As Arthur is barely conscious, he tells Mera of the tracker, leading her to destroy the bracelet. Meanwhile, Black Manta makes it to his stealth ship just outside of Sicily, ready to prepare for round 2. Later that day, Arthur awakens on a boat, covered in seaweed that helped heal his wounds, as he hears Mera playing a flute at the front of the boat. Mera then states that the Red Soldiers were Orm's commandos, but she's never seen the man in black before, to which Arthur explains that the man is a pirate whose father he let have to die out of hatred for them, but now has become a monster of Arthur's own making. Arthur then expresses how his choice to let someone die created an enemy that could have hurt Mera, and realizes that it wouldn't have been any different with the people of Atlantis had they been left at his mercy, not after finding out what they did to his mother. Mera then states that hatred is a plague, but not one that the surface alone sparked, but is a sad natural reality of existence throughout the entire universe, and that all they can do is their best to quell the hatred and learn from their mistakes, as Mera has learned from the surface. Relating to the subject of Atlanna's sentence, Mera states that the charted path is leading them to the kingdom of the Trench, the same creatures that killed Atlanna. Arthur feels ready to give up and simply warn the surface about what's coming, and that he's not a king and not willing to let Mera die trying to turn him into something he's not. However, Mera argues that he is worthy because he comes from 2 different worlds, being living proof that they can coexist. Mera claims that she can see it now, but asks Arthur if he can see it too. Meanwhile in Atlantis, Orm and Volko prepare to attack the Brine Kingdom, but Orm confronts Volko, revealing that he knows about how Volko trained Arthur to overthrow him. Volko tries to reason with Orm, stating that he still cares for him despite him not being fit for the throne, but Orm simply places Volko under arrest, claiming that one by one, Arthur's very existence just keeps taking more ore from him. But soon, he will take everything back. Back at the ocean, Arthur and Mera are in a storm, and as they try to evade it, the Trench attacks their boat, needing them to fight back and discover their nocturnal weakness to light. Not having better options, Arthur and Mera decided to dive into the ocean, swimming as fast as they can until they reach the kingdom of the Trench, finding their way to the hidden sea. After much encounter with the Trench, they reach an underwater maelstrom of some sort, having little option but to swim directly into it. Arthur and Mera eventually find themselves within the hidden sea, as Mera is saved by an unknown individual from being eaten by a predator. Arthur looks on to view the hidden sea within the Earth's core, swimming all the way to shore. As Mera wakes up in surprise at the individual, the person then takes off their mask, revealing something surprising to Mera. As Arthur gets closer to Mera and the individual, the person turns and reveals reveals herself to be none other than Atlanta, Queen of Atlantis, and Arthur and Orm's mother. Atlanta looks straight at Arthur and recognizes her son, with Arthur shocked to see his mother alive. The two embrace in a hug, one that Arthur thought he would have to die for all this time to have. Moments later, as the trio enters a cave, Atlanta reveals that after she was sacrificed by Orvax, she survived and found her way to the Hidden Sea, where she stayed for 20 years. Atlanta apologizes for the agony she's put Arthur through and makes it clear that none of it was his fault, and that she made a choice to leave in order to protect him and his father. Atlanta asks about Tom, to which Arthur reveals that he walks to the end of the dock every day waiting for her. Arthur asks Atlanta why she never came back, to which she explains that the portal into the Hidden Sea is a one-way trip, and only the one who wields the trident of Atlan can escape, but is guarded by the Carathan beyond the waterfall in front of them. Mira suggests that they fight the creature, but Atlanta states that it's too powerful, stating that the Carathan will only allow the true king to pass. Atlanta then acknowledges Arthur's fear, stating that it's a good thing, and that it means he's ready. Arthur then agrees and proceeds to go past the waterfall. As Arthur enters the sanctum of Atlan, he beholds the body of Atlan, still holding the trident to this day. Just then, the Carathan attacks and speaks aloud, telling Arthur that she has seen false kings and champions fall in an attempt to take the trident for 1,000 years. However, the Carathan expresses her disdain as someone with tainted blood has appeared to claim the trident. Arthur attempts to defeat the Carathan, but to no avail. Realizing something, Arthur decides to use his powers of aquatic communication to speak to the Carathan, catching it off guard. Arthur then expresses that he's not come here because he's worthy, but that he wishes to save innocent lives, both Atlantis and the surface, from a needless war. The Carathan, in surprise, acknowledges that Arthur possesses what she calls the gift, something that only King Atlan possessed when they first encountered each other. The Carathan then asks who Arthur is, with him replying that he's nobody, just a product of a love between an Atlantean queen and a human lighthouse keeper, a person born out of love, and that's all he needs to be, whether he is deemed worthy or not. And now, he stands before the Carathan with nothing but love guiding him in order to protect the people, the mother, the father, the woman, and the brother he loves. Surprisingly, the Carathan pulls back, explaining the true story of herself and Atlan's first encounter. A small flashback shows that she was a monster concerned with her own survival, and that the people of Atlantis wanted nothing more than the problem solved through violence and hatred, seeing it as noble people defeating a wretched monster. However, before his exile, Atlan confronted Carathan, but never drew first blood. All the Carathan did was attack, with Atlan never using his trident to attack, only block. It was then that Atlan used his gift to commune with the Carathan, and it was then that she understood what it was he truly fought for. Not just a united people, but a united world through voice, not strength. Back in the present, Arthur begins to recognize that the Carathan was never imprisoned, with the Carathan confirming that she's chosen to stay here in defense of the trident and the very dream Atlan stood for, a world united by peace. The Carathan then states that no man has ever freed the trident from Atlan's grip, but if he deems Arthur unworthy, she will feast upon him due to her sense of duty. With tension growing, Arthur claims the trident from Atlan's grasp, its power radiating throughout him, allowing the body to finally evaporate into the trident, leaving Atlan's clothing behind. As Arthur grasps the trident, he feels the creatures of the deep connect with him. Arthur then arrives out of the waterfall, becoming what he was always meant to be, the Aquaman. Meanwhile, in the Brine Kingdom, Orm and Nereus prepare for battle against the Brine King, with Orm donning his comic-accurate costume. Orm then tells Atlantis to rise and attack the Brine Kingdom. As the battle rages, the Brine King, now without his right arm, is at the mercy of Orm, who now claims the title of Ocean Master. Just then, from under the volcanic ground, the Carathan ridden by Aquaman appears, catching the attention of Vulko, the Fisherman Princess, Nereus, and Ocean Master. Orm orders his army to attack, but Aquaman retaliates by speaking to the creatures of the deep. gaining an army of his own. The two armies battle in epic fashion, leading Aquaman and Mera to meet up, with Mera stating that she'll find her uncle and that Arthur needs to defeat Orm. Arthur asks what if he can't win, but Mera tells him to make Orm fight in his element this time, leading to the two sharing in their passionate kiss. The two then separate to finish the mission they started. As Arthur battles, the people begin to notice Arthur wielding the Trident of Atlan, which Mera and Atlantean soldiers make clear to Nereus, who agrees to follow Arthur's rule by law. After a lengthy chase, Aquaman and Ocean Master find their way to the surfaced Atlantean ship, ready for the final battle for all of the four kingdoms, as well as Mera and Vulko to witness. Orm states that the Trident doesn't change who Arthur is, and that Atlantis will never accept him. To which Arthur repeats something that Orm once said, "By bloodshed do the gods make known their will." After an incredible and decisive battle, with Arthur even learning the technique Vulko showed him when he was a teenager, Aquaman succeeds in destroying Ocean Master's trident and has him at his mercy. As Orm pressures him to kill him, stating that mercy is not their way, Arthur is then suddenly caught off guard by the sight of what looks like his father Tom standing behind Orm on the same boat they stand on, the leaders of the other kingdoms, as well as Vulko and Mera, showing expressions of confusion. Taking advantage of the confusion, Ocean Master knocks back Aquaman, takes the Trident of Atlan, and stabs Arthur in the side torso, once again defeating Arthur as he kicks him back into the ocean for the creatures of the deep to feast on. Mera and Vulko look on in horror as Ocean Master now wields the Trident of Atlan, followed by Orm asking if anyone opposes his rule now, leading the four kingdoms to bow and accept him as their king. As Mera and Vulko escape, Orm orders an attack on the surface world at once. Meanwhile, Mera and Vulko search for Arthur's body, only to hear a familiar dolphin-like sound coming from the direction of Arthur's home, which is the secret code that certain Atlanteans use in order to keep the enemy from overhearing. Mera and Vulko end up meeting with Atlanna, much to Vulko's surprise, who is carrying a wounded Arthur. The three decide to swim as fast as they can back to Arthur's lighthouse home in order to regroup. That morning, the people of the city of Boston begin to feel rumblings from all around them. Just then, people at the Boston coast begin seeing the army of the four kingdoms rise from the water and advance on the city, leading civilians to run in terror. Meanwhile, off the Boston coast, Black Manta sees a report of the invasion on the television, realizing just how much of a monster Orm is, as well as also realizing that Aquaman has a chance of showing up at this invasion. Back at the lighthouse, Atlanna, Mera, and Vulko act quickly, getting Arthur inside the lighthouse to treat his wounds in peace while Atlanna shouts for Tom, but no reply is given. Atlanna is confused as to why Tom doesn't answer, with him seemingly not being at the lighthouse, which confuses Atlanna. As Mera and Vulko treat Arthur's wounds, he suddenly wakes up, happy to see everyone okay, including his father, or Tom, who he sees sitting in the lone chair. As Arthur shows a happy expression, Mera, Vulko, and Atlanna show an expression of confusion, to which Arthur questions. With slight breaking in her voice, Atlanna tells Arthur that there's no one sitting on the chair, turning Arthur's happy expression into one of confusion. Arthur then takes it as a bad-timed joke, as Arthur clearly sees his father sitting on his chair, but turns to find it empty, much to his dismay. Vulko looks at Arthur with an expression of melancholy, while Mera covers her mouth in slight shock, realizing what's happening. Arthur begins to get hysterical, repeating that his dad's not gone, he can't be, and he'd never leave him. As Arthur gets up and continues to get hysterical, Mera tries to calm him down, while Atlanna begins to break out in tears, not just for the realization, but for the true pain her son is feeling at this moment. Arthur continues to repeat that he's not gone, stating that he'd never leave him over and over until he asks why would he leave him, leading Arthur to lean himself over the fireplace mantle. Slight flashes of the past reveal that the times Arthur was speaking to his father, he was actually speaking to no one. Back in the present, Arthur looks directly at his reflection off the urn on the mantle, the urn that holds Tom's ashes, and has for all these years. Arthur then kneels down and cries in despair, Mera embracing him in the hug, knowing the pain he's going through, as he too lost her parents. Moments later, Arthur is at the end of the docks, looking out into the horizon. Atlanta approaches Arthur, with him revealing that he promised his dad that he'd spread his ashes into the sea, a place he knew that he could find Atlanta in again one day. Then after he got sick and died, Arthur just felt so angry at the world and just couldn't accept losing another parent, and so fooled himself into thinking he never died. Arthur states that his father had so much hope, but died before he could see the love of his life again. Anna, however, expresses how though she's been gone for so long, she can see his love through Arthur and how he's grown. However, Atlanta also makes it clear that he did die seeing the love of his life, his only child born out of love, and believes that he was content with it without a shadow of a doubt, knowing that the very love he had for her could live on in Arthur. Just then, Volko and Mira approach, stating that the television shows a report of Orm's invasion on the surface beginning at Boston. Arthur, however, questions how he can even become king after losing the trident. Mira, however, states that Atlantis has always had a king, but now it needs something more. Arthur asks what could be better than a king, with Atlanta replying, a hero. Volko then states that they'll never make it to the city in time before they've taken it. Arthur, however, states that it's for them not to worry, as he's not the only misfit this world has to offer. Back in Boston, Batman arrives to aid the civilians. With the aid of Alfred, he finds an area where he aids civilians in evacuation. As Atlantean machines and soldiers begin to surround Batman, he activates the Nightcrawler to aid him in battle, pushing back the waves of Atlantean enemies. Meanwhile, many of Orm's commandos and brine entrenched soldiers attack and kill civilians, but some are saved thanks to the intervention of Superman, still donned in his black suit. Superman does his best not to kill any of the enemies, but does everything he can to defeat them. Suddenly, at the edge of the city of Boston, a walking vessel ridden by Ocean Master and Nereus enters the city from beneath the water of the docks. However, before they could continue any further, Black Manta appears from behind and lands in front of them both. Black Manta then expresses how he thought Aquaman was the only monster, but it appears that the Atlanteans are no different than him. Orm then gives all the credit of this invasion to Manta due to his attack on Atlantis, catching Nereus' attention. Orm then states that all he did was speed up the inevitable, and that he was a pawn for something greater than his vengeance. Enraged, Black Manta attacks Orm, and the two engage in combat. After a lengthy duel, Orm ultimately defeats Black Manta, pushing him back into the ocean, seemingly killing him. Orm and Nereus then continue to advance to the center of Boston, only for Nereus to confront him about the surface dweller he just defeated. Orm then admits to his collaboration with him after the attack, but it doesn't matter, as Orm wields the trident. Despite this, Nereus retaliates and attempts to kill Orm, but to no avail as Nereus is defeated and arrested by nearby Atlantean soldiers. Before Ocean Master can execute Nereus for treason, he is confronted by both Superman and Batman. Ocean Master then shows his composure, introducing himself and surmises that they must be the Guardians that aligned with his brother to defeat Steppenwolf. Ocean Master then reveals that hostility between their worlds has not stopped their espionage, not even enough for Superman's heritage to go unnoticed, referring to him as a Kryptonian, and also referring to Batman as the odd one out amongst his kind due to his choice of attire. Ocean Master then states that no matter how much power or weaponry they possess, he will not back down, readying himself for battle against the two heroes. However, the Carathan would then suddenly emerge from the docks Ocean Master and Nereus came from, allowing Aquaman to jump all the way to the vessel everyone is standing on. Aquaman then tells Superman and Batman that it has to be him who defeats Orm, otherwise his army will never listen to reason. Despite Batman's reluctance, both he and Superman state that they'll cover him just in case of any outside interference, to which Aquaman appreciates. Aquaman confronts Orm, who states that he possesses the trident and is the rightful king of Atlantis. Arthur, however, argues that this war cannot go on, that he has been misguided by hatred and that this has to stop. Arthur then states that Orm is his brother, and that he doesn't want to fight him, but Orm states that he has no brother. Orm attacks every second as Arthur defends and parries each attack, making his words count with each one of Orm's attacks he dodges. After a lengthy fight, Arthur then decides to use his aquatic communication powers on the people of Atlantis, catching all of their attention, stopping all hostilities in the city, and persuading the Atlantean army to meet up where Arthur and Orm are. Confused, Orm asks what the sound is and demands that Arthur makes it stop, leading Orm to throw the trident straight at Arthur. However, Arthur catches the trident, his message made clear, and once again possesses right to the throne. Just then, a reporter from the Daily Planet, who's taking shelter atop a building, witnesses and is reporting everything happening at the moment involving Aquaman. As Orm looks around at the united Atlantis, as well as seeing the humans appearing from out of the buildings, Orm kneels down and removes his mask and helmet. Arthur then approaches Orm, trident in hand. As Arthur looks down at him, Orm asks why their mother had to die for you and why she left him behind, asking if their mother ever even loved him, as tears begin to flow down Orm's eyes. As Arthur looks down at Orm, he begins to have flashbacks of that very question he asked Volko all those years ago, as well as his hysteria when realizing his father had passed. Realizing that despite Orm's hatred of the surface world, he was angry at the world for their mother's death as he was. Arthur then drops the trident, kneels down, and hugs his little brother, telling him that she loved both of them with all of her heart and that he's not alone. As the two brothers cry and genuinely embrace each other, Arthur then states that he still does love him with all of her heart, confusing Orm. Just then, Adlana reveals herself to her youngest, bringing Orm to confusion and tears. Adlana tells him that this hatred must end. Orm realizing that she's with Arthur, but still shows restraint in his slight hatred. After the heartfelt reunion, Volko, Nereus, and Mera approach and place Orm under arrest. Arthur then tells Orm that when he's ready to talk, let's talk. Arthur then looks around at both Atlantean and surface dwellers. Arthur then asks Mera what he should do now, with Mera stating for him to be their king. As Arthur looks around, he pushes his voice for all to hear, stating that Atlantis is real and is to blame for everything that's happened this day, but the surface has a hand in it as well. Arthur then explains that he, born from a union between a human and an Atlantean, but grew up on the surface. Arthur then states that despite how he once felt about Atlantis, he's seen as much great horrors on the surface as much as underwater. War, poverty, pollution, and corruption, revealing that every moment the world polluted the sea, Atlantis saw it as an act of aggression. Arthur then states that just as Atlantis has much to learn about peace and change, so does the surface, and that change needs to happen now. Arthur tells everyone not to unite to pollute the seas, but unite to clean them. Come together to protect sea life, not kill it. Unite the land and sea by treating each other the way you want it to be treated. Arthur finally states that a great man once told him that a man can burn bridges, but a king builds bridges. And Arthur wants to build a bridge between the surface and the land. Arthur acknowledges that this day may not see that dream fulfilled, as Atlantis has done much harm to the surface this day, but promises on his life that while he is king, he will strive for both worlds to become one through peace. Everyone, including a minority of humans, then cheer at Aquaman's words, stating themselves to hail to the king, cementing a future of peace and prosperity. As Aquaman narrates his story once again, that sunset shows Adlana with the urn in her arms, meeting up with Arthur at the edge of the docks. Adlana then opens the urn, with both her and Arthur gracefully releasing Tom's ashes into the ocean from the edge of the dock, saying a final goodbye to a good husband and a good father. Arthur's voiceover states that his parents' love saved the world. Moments later that day, Arthur is overlooking Atlantis, followed by swimming himself to the surface. Arthur's voiceover states that they made him what he is today, a son of the land and the king of the seas. Arthur then claims he is the protector of the deep. He is Aquaman. A post-credit scene shows Black Manta being found by a group of fishermen. Later that day, we see a recorded TV report of Stephen Shin trying to explain his evidence on Atlantis, to which is dismissed by his peers, revealing that he was fired from the United States Institute of Marine Science. Meanwhile, the actual Stephen Shin is tampering with Black Manta's helmet, David then warning Shin about doing that. After the plasma beam destroys a corner of his house, Stephen then realizes that it's Atlantean technology, followed by asking David where he got it from. David agrees to tell him, but only in exchange for his help on the whereabouts of Aquaman, followed by David throwing his dagger and stabbing it into a poster of a silhouetted man with the headline, "Who is Aquaman?" I hope you guys enjoyed this revision. You won't believe how long it took me to implement all these changes, but I really hope it was worth it. And if you did like this video, don't forget to like, share, Hulk smash that subscribe button to help expand our content for your entertainment, and be sure to click that notification bell to stay updated on the latest videos. Also, don't forget to check out our merch store linked in the description and pinned comment down below. You can also find the link to our store on our channel page as well. I also urge you to comment down below on what you thought of this revision, whether good or bad. I appreciate the honest feedback. I also encourage you to comment any questions you have about this revision or any other rewrite or revision I've done so far. With all that said and done, I'm JT Anime. I'll check you guys later, and hashtag restore the Snyderverse.